The Crotchety Old Men podcast is not a registered investment, legal, or tax advisor or a broker-dealer. All investment financial opinions expressed by or on the Crotchety Old Men podcast are from the personal research and experience of the owner of the site and are intended as educational material. Although best efforts are made to ensure that all information is accurate and up to date, occasionally unintended errors and misprints may occur. Before you invest or make any investment-based decisions, consider your own personal circumstances. You should do your own research and seek advice from a financial professional.
Well. Happy Thursday once again. Another episode with the Crotchety Old Men. In the studio, as always, are my two partners in crime, my main man, Paul Clemens and George Crumley. Gentlemen, top of the day to you.
Top
Hey
of the
man,
day
happy
to you too,
Thursday.
my brother. How's it going?
Man, it's going my way, only way it can go. What's good, George? What's good?
Man, life is good as always. It's just so great to wake up in the morning, smell the coffee, see the dust on the ceiling fan. I know I'm alive and ready to go. So hey, happy Thursday, and let's get it on here.
Let's get it on. BC, what we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about what's the advantages of flipping houses versus holding on to your house with your purchases, with your real estate purchases.
I mean, that's a doggone good topic right there, man. Because you know how many people out here uh, wanting to get into real estate don't really know how. There's not a day to go by where, particularly a younger person, wants to, I want to get into the real estate game, and certainly I encourage that. Obviously, being investors like ourselves, we've all have bought, purchased, and flipped homes, and some of them we still could maintain. And let's talk about that. So what are some of the hurdles? What are some of the steps that people should do? And even some of the people that's already out there in it. Sometimes you get into a deal and you don't know how to get out of one. So we want to talk about those type of things too. So with that being said, I'm going to toss it right on over here to my partner in crime there, George Crumley. Let him talk about what he does.
All right, Gary, cool. Hey, that's interesting because that's where I made most of my fortune was buying rental property in the city of Detroit. Started at a young age, and me and my brother and trying to at that time create cash flow, create affordable housing, in the neighborhoods, kind of clean up the neighborhoods. And what we found was different. We stumbled around, but what we found was the best way to do it was to finance it, get financing, fix them up, and try to hold them as long as we could. Now, we did flip some, but I think, like you said, it's an interesting point, as far as, what's the advantage of each. So let's talk about holding first, okay? If you buy a home, and like I said, if you're looking at how you're going to finance it, there's obviously several different ways to do that. One is the most conventional way, which is finding something that's affordable, going to the bank, getting a loan, uh, basically using that money to purchase the home, trying to borrow enough to fix up the house, and then once you fix it up, then you want to go ahead and find a tenant for it. So that's probably the most conventional way. Now there are other ways too, and you guys can chime in, which is now is more popular, which is hard money loans, which allow you to go in with no approval. So what do you think about that?
Well, here's the caveat, I guess, if you will, or the hurdle. With most traditional lending, you got to have all those three C's, the cash, the credit, and collateral. And while you may have the cash, you actually don't have that collateral yet, because if you're talking about purchasing a home for investment purposes, then there's some homework you got to do before you do that, because the bank is going to send you through that underwriting process. And the first one is this: you don't want to buy the worst the best property in the worst neighborhood. because you're not buying that property is not going to raise up the rest of the neighborhood, and the bank is going to base their approval or denial based upon the appraisal. What you're looking for is to buy a home that's under the market value. So now, ideally, if you got a neighborhood of houses and families, or even if they're rental, but people are keeping up the neighborhood, got schools, you have bus lines, so you have these things that amenities that's available, so that when a person does choose to rent or purchase your home, that is going to have that appeal to it. So with that in mind, is that if a property in that neighborhood, the homes are selling for $100,000, let's say, and you can get this house that maybe for 40, even better yet, 30, knowing that you're going to have to maybe put in another 10 or 15 or $20,000 into it, put in a new kitchen, strip out the bathroom, and as I like to say, pimp it all out, make it really beautiful. So now you're into this property of anywhere $60,000, $65,000, and what you have there is a cushion or a spread of $35,000. That's the ideal situation. Whereas now you can go in there and get that property, fix it up, put it back on the market, or rent it out. And we're talking about on the whole tip, then we're going to be what? Landlords. And if that's the case, then you also need to do the homework and knowing that, all right, well, what are homes renting for in this particular area? Having that data will enable you to not only protect your investment, but it'll actually also have you enough cushion in there. Whereas that if you need to refi later on, or if you decide to sell it later on, you have enough cushion in there, like I like to say, enough juice baked in for the squeeze, if you will, in order to make it a profitable investment.
So let me ask you this, Gary. When you talk about rehabbing and refabbing the house, uh, what kind of loans other than cash is available for you to do that?
Well, it's been my experience. At one time, again in Detroit, I was a partner in an investment team. We had about 60, 65 houses. And let me tell you, this is 65 headaches after a while, but it was good. After 65 renters, you can buy enough aspirin to ease that headache. Okay, so
Right, right.
nothing like that cash flow coming in, right? So what we did was we developed a rehab team. So identify guys that knew how to install hot water tanks, got some guys that know how to do electric wiring, and so on and so forth. So what happens is that the added benefit is this, that we're able to employ other people. Okay, people can do the roof, you can do plaster and molding and all this sort of thing. And so, but that's money that's got to come out of your pocket. The bank, yeah, you can probably get it from them after you've done some things, but usually they're going to give that into you in draws. And again, as long as your credit, and this is why we've talked in other episodes about the importance of having your credit right. Okay, so if you got good credit, and the bank will give you a line of credit or issue a loan, now you can go ahead and get these things done. But there's a timetable too. The quicker you can get your rehab team in and out of there, and depending upon, because we don't ever know what's behind those walls.
Right.
Okay, and so once you find, because you can get a house that looks nice on the outside, don't look like it's got a whole lot to do in it, and a lot of people have gotten hurt by thinking that, okay, I can just slap, like we used to say, just slap some lipstick and makeup on a pig and rent it out. That can come back and haunt you real bad. So to your question, I believe that one of the most salient ways to do is that when you got your team, because to get in there and try and do it yourself, if you're not an expert at doing this kind of stuff, again, you're going to mess it up, and you're going to have to either redo it again. It's going to cost you more money and time. Because here's one of the big gaps there. From the time you get title to that property and to the time that you're able to get a tenant in there is where your biggest risk is. And I'm not just talking about break-ins. I'm talking about delays in material, delays in people. Again, if you're hiring people off the street, or you're assembling your team, like any employer, you're going to go through a lot of different people until you can find that right nucleus. And so it's imperative, and I want to go back to this, is doing your homework first.
Yeah, all good points, Smitty. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I guess my approach was probably a little bit different in buying the investment property because, it's like we've talked in previous episodes about creating a bucket for different things that you're going to budget for. So basically, the way I attacked it was I created a budget for actually purchasing rental property. Obviously, I got a partner, so we had enough capital. Basically, what we did was we went ahead and got a conventional loan for it. But then, as far as the fix up, I used cash out of my pocket, and the reason I used cash out of my pocket was because I knew I would benefit from the tax deduction. So when I look at rental property or income property, I look at there's more than one income stream or more than one way to profit from it.
Mm.
Obviously, the most conventional way is, like you say, the rent that you're going to get on a monthly basis, because that rent, the delta on that rent, paying the mortgage and paying anything else, the delta is what's going to go in your pocket. So that's the one way. But the other way is taxes. Okay, so that obviously when we talked about creating an LLC and getting yourself in a position so that you're within the tax laws. But once you create all of that, the fix up, like you say, the kitchen, the bathroom, and those, being a real estate agent here, uh, I know that those are the most appealing areas that you have to attack is the kitchens and the bathrooms. The rest of the house, you just want to make sure that you got good paint on the walls. You want to make sure you got good flooring. If it's carpet, to either take it out or clean it, whichever is appropriate based on the fix up. And like you say, when you're looking for these houses, you got to make sure that you get an inspector, because you want to make sure that there's no structural things going on. You want to make sure that you know the things that you want to do to this house are basically cosmetic. If there are some structural things, you want to make sure you have that covered in your budget, and as well as someone that's reliable from a contractor perspective to come in quickly and do that, because like you said, those delays could really hurt you. But like I said, so those are the kind of things you want to look at is, okay, I'm going to make funny money from the rent, but I'm also going to get the tax deduction. So if you're working, which we're talking about different streams of income for those that are working, you now created additional tax benefits here, again reducing your yearly salary based on additional deductions. So that means your tax liability is going to be lower. Therefore, you're going to end up paying less money to Uncle Sam. So those are the kind of things that you want to take in mind into consideration when you're buying and rehabbing a piece of property. But yeah, not just the rent, but the tax advantages also.
Yeah, you're so right, George, because as I'm listening to you, you always have to consider the costs and the different ways that you make. That's what makes real estate such a wonderful investment, because you have the depreciation, you have the taxes that you're able to write off, and then of course all the expenses that you incur, and that's your cost basis, if you will, using legal terms there. Your cost basis or your step up basis into that particular property, and those things are that you're able to write off. The whole point of doing the work and getting it done is to create that income. And so, but then what's net to me was always the question I would have to ask. Okay, as the property owner, what am I responsible for that's not going to change? Well, if we're talking houses, that water bill is not going to change. Okay.
Right.
Uh, okay. You're going to be responsible for that water bill. All right. And so, yeah, you may bake it into the rent, but ultimately you're responsible for the water bill. All right. So that's got to come out of the rent. All right. There's a mortgage. Depending upon how long or the terms of the mortgage are, you got that mortgage that you got to pay. And so that's not going to change either. So you look at your consistent costs that you have. So you got your taxes, you got your mortgage, and you got that water bill. And of course, also most prudent investors will have what? Insurance on that asset.
Now you say that the mortgage won't change, but what if you're in a house that has a HOA involved? Sometimes those HOAs raise those prices up, you know, almost for another monthly mortgage rate or rental rate or whatever the case might be. So, what do you do in a case like that, or how do you consider that?
Well, um, what I would do, first of all, again, as I said earlier, is that you have to consider your costs. What expenses am I as the landlord going to be responsible for? And if you're in a neighborhood where there's a housing association, homeowners association going on, or there's some block clubs out here, I guess, that have some stringent homeowner association fees or what have you. Okay, and if that's the case, then you have to consider that these are going to be the expenses that are coming out of this rent. And if you're in a area where the average, I won't even say the maximum rent, where the average rent, so let's just say to keep the numbers simple, if you're in an area where the most that you can get for this house is $1,000 a month, then, and if your expenses exceed 60 to 65% of that, then you have to look at, from George's point, he said he used cash out of his pocket. So now,
Hmm.
how do I recoup that cash back? And what's the return on investment of that cash? Because if your notes and everything else is considered is $6,500 to $700 a month, and you got a you got a $1,000 a month note that's being paid to you, a rent that you're renting out. So your net cash is $300. Okay, and so is that, it all depends on you, the investor, and what you put into it. If that's adequate return on that investment, then hey, you got your good deal. But if not, if there's any other contingencies that come up, hot water tank or whatever else that could be done, or you didn't do a thorough investigation about that roof, and you just went up there and looked, oh, okay, all the shingles are here. Hey, it's a good roof. And to George's point, without having an inspector, and only to find out that 8, 9, maybe 12 months later on, you get that call, hey, the roof is leaking all over my furniture in the living room. What you gonna do about it? That $300 that you were so should have been reinvesting or saving now becomes gone, and now you got to dig in your pocket again. So it's the pitfalls, the pitfalls, the pitfalls. As long as you know what the pitfalls are and things of that nature, now you either can mitigate them or eliminate them. But what you
Yeah.
don't want is for them to come up as a surprise later on.
Right. Um, so let me kind of bring this on home, because one of the things that I like to do is to talk to our audience as it is right now, and this is also kind of transition to the conversation about flipping. Okay, so because we kind of talked about holding, but in today's market, here again from a real estate perspective, if you're in Atlanta or you're in California, housing is very expensive, very expensive. So when you start talking about um, buying a house and rehabbing and renting out, you're not talking about $100,000 house. You're probably talking about more like a $200,000 house or
Right.
$230,000 house. And it's like, in my position, how can I get there? So let me just throw this little tidbit out there. In today's society where everything is mobile, everything's online, you really need to take advantage of the areas that the property is still affordable. You may be in Atlanta, but my suggestion would be look at the property in Detroit. I'm looking at a listing right now, $59,000 for a house. I'm looking at a house for $80,000. And these houses are retailing on the market for over 100,000, 200,000. So you say, well, hey, I don't know anybody in Detroit, but it's not like that anymore. You can get on a plane, you can take some vacation time, you can go in on a weekend, you can do your homework, most of it online. And so when you get there, you're already prepared. You can set up, and I've done this. I bought a piece of property years ago in California, and basically what I did was after we closed on the property, I'm in Atlanta. I called up several floor vendors. I called up several appliance vendors and some other construction guys. I got the quotes that I wanted. Got on a plane, went out there, met with all of them, decided which contract they're going to use, and we went to work. I think I was out there for 2 weeks, but when I was, as I was leaving, the house was put back together. So you can do that. And that's from Atlanta to California. I mean, you can do the same thing from Atlanta to Detroit, which is a drive. You don't have to fly. But what I'm saying is utilize your time and your resources to find the deals in that price range, which are affordable to you. And then after you get the house together, they have management companies that can manage the property. They'll find you a tenant. They'll find, they'll manage the day in and out maintenance. And it's not that expensive to have a management company, but it's worth it because here again, it's another write-off and it gives you some peace of mind. But so don't pigeonhole yourself into a position where you think, wherever, whatever city I am, that's where I have to buy. I
Mm.
know when I first started, it was an adage when you want to buy a house close to you so you can keep an eye on it. Well, economy is not going to always allow you to do that. So you got to take advantage of your resources online. You can see, I mean, I got people buying houses to live in sight unseen. So you can buy a rental property sight
Right.
unseen. It's just building relationships with an inspector and whatnot. So, there's ways to do everything. So, as we transition the conversation into flipping, that's even more important because now you're talking about buying a house, fixing it up, you know, adjusting, making sure that's within the market value, and then putting it on the market within that same time frame, being 30, 60, 90 days. So that's a different animal and comes with some additional challenges. But I think it kind of still fits in with choices that you can have, right, guys?
Right.
I would say so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I
another
like.
thing I would say, anybody in our that's tuning in that's at our age, at the crotchety age, I would suggest taking a plane because ain't none of us driving to.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. Because that drive to Atlanta kicked my butt. So shoot. I'm like, how these
And
people do this,
I'm
man?
only good for about 8 hours, and that's not long
Ooh,
enough for me to get from Detroit to
oh
Atlanta.
Well,
my.
actually, I was directing it to those that were in that age of mobility.
Yeah, you a real crotchety sitting up in a car for 4, 5, 8, 9 hours
Oh
in the
no, that's
car.
out.
That's out, man. Talk
Those
about
are days long gone.
that creates road rage. And at our age, we don't have time for that either. But before we switch over to that flipping plan, that's one thing I really want to emphasize that with the buy and hold strategy. Another thing that you have to your advantage is the long-term capital gains. Okay. And that's very important because it's not how much you make, but how much you keep.
How much you
And
right?
so, and we look at what's going on in the market today. You have commercialized, matter of fact, REITs who are going out here now buying homes, brand new homes, and they're renting them out. They're not even building them to purchase for the direct homeowner to purchase. That's why it's highly competitive. You have five, six, seven offers, and some of them over the $200,000 or $300,000 asking price because of such much fierce competition to get into these homes, and because of the affordability. Now that question right there, affordable housing, is an oxymoron. I'm telling you, affordable compared to what? Okay. When you go across the country and the average AMI, which the average median income is, you get 80% of whatever that average income is. Well, heck, if the average income is 100 grand and they're talking about affordable housing is at 80%, that's $80,000. Come on, guys. So there's trickeration in this stuff about affordable housing. Okay, what's affordable? It depends upon how much you're making because a man and woman that's only making $15 to $18 an hour on their job, they can't afford a two
Can't
hundred
afford
thousand
that.
dollar house. They have to rent. Will their dream ever be achieved? No, not unless they do something really incredulous, start another business or doing something else where they can add to that income to get that capital stack strong enough to qualify. So if we could go dive more detail into the affordability piece versus et cetera. But for the sake of this podcast today, as we're talking about investment properties, when we look at affordability, yeah, we would love to be able to do that. But when we talk about the cost of lumber, for instance, the cost of appliances, a lot of stoves and refrigerators are still sitting out there in Long Beach Harbor. Some poor suckers waiting on a daggone refrigerator to be delivered. Okay, and that's time. So, so anyway, as we go ahead and segue into buying and flipping, as George said, that's a whole nother animal, wholly different. And in my experience, and she believes that there's more risk involved in the flipping than there is in the holding. Would you say that? What are your thoughts on that, George?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you flip a house, you've got to make sure some of those things that you talked about earlier, as far as making sure it's in a great area, making sure that it's the gap between what the houses are selling for and what you're purchasing, there's a big delta there. Whereas in buying and holding, I mean, there doesn't have to be a huge delta because you're going to make that money up over time. So you've eliminated the time factor. So when you're flipping, first of all, you're going to get a house that's going to need some work because you're looking in a particular area where you can make sure that once you get it to that standard, there's a big enough delta that you're going to make enough money to sustain you and keep you going to buying the next house. And that's when I would think more so that you would look at a hard money loan as opposed to going to a conventional lender, because here again, there's no qualifying. You can go in. Obviously, there's a downside because there's a time limit because they're going to charge you a little bit more interest. But that maybe sometimes that sense of urgency will get you, get you off your butt and get you going and making sure that you're making the right steps day in and day out, putting towards getting that house fixed up. The thing about flipping is that there are a lot of um, unknowns in rehabbing that house, and I'm sure you've all looked at these, houses, these programs on TV where they go in and they flip this house. That's vaporware, folks. It don't happen like that. It does not happen like that. It does not happen that easy. No, it does.
Vaporware.
That is vaporware. Hey, so if you're going in and saying I saw this on whatever channel you HLM or whatever these channels are, and I'm gonna do that, it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen like that. First of all, your partner is probably gonna be a guy in some overalls. It ain't gonna be no cute chick with no blonde hair. So that's the first thing you got to get over. Okay, so it don't happen like that. It don't happen like that. So, but in all seriousness, you've really got to get out there and do your legwork. You really got to get out there and find that house that needs some work in that neighborhood that's really in bad shape, but is in a really really good neighborhood. You know, and you got to be prepared for those other things when you start tearing out walls and you got rot and you got termites and you got something else. So, and every time one of these things come up, that goes into your profit.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you've really got to be serious, and there's a lot of other things you got to look at when you're flipping homes.
Yeah. And one of those things is Pookie and them. Okay, because depending upon where you get that house at, and you got it all fixed up and it's ready to go, and then as soon as that doggone ad go out there, you got your tenant and you get ready to go by there and show them where show them the house, and you walk in and open the door, and what happened to the refrigerator? Go downstairs. There's no hot water tank down here, and
Right.
so on and so forth. So vandalism and the cost to keep that property safe until you're able to flip it also goes into your profit, such as alarm systems and on and on and on. What I'm finding out now, some investors are just waiting until they have that buyer or that person that's in place that they're going to flip it to, and then they put in the appliances or what have you. Okay, so there's other ways around it, but to George's point, you really really have to do your homework. And then here's the other caveat to this too: hard money is given the term hard money for a reason. Okay. You got this time limits, typically 90 days at most. I think in some cases, depends upon the hard money lender. And whereas a bank may charge you 5%, hard money lender is going to charge you anywhere from 10 to 12%, depending upon the risk that's involved in that situation. So you're going to be really induced or incentivized, I should say, to get that hard money lender out of your pocket quick, fast, and in a hurry, because every moment delay that you have is costing you dearly to get out of that property profitably. So it's a lot of moving parts involved in flipping out. Some people went in there to flip and they end up flopping. And I know families that have been destroyed because the wife she already saw it, but the husband was dead on because he's thinking about that check and thinking about his crew that's going to get in there and fix that house. But he just saw the home channel, what have you, and reality sets in. So pick your poison: flipping or holding. Me, I'm a holder too. I would much rather have that predictable income stream, cash flow coming in. It can trickle in all at once, but it's still coming in. And the time value of money, is a wonderful thing because that's still income versus
And I
what you
like
flip.
George's approach. I like George's approach too, with regard to you having a house and then you're able to um, uh, you're able to take advantage of the tax credits that go along with that, which is something I never thought of when I bought my house. I never
Yeah.
thought about how to arrange um, all my stuff so that I can benefit from tax credits as well as the ability to raise the price of that house whenever I was getting ready to sell it. So that's a very good point George makes, with his two pronged approach to buying houses.
And also to George's credit too, I like what he says in terms of all right. So yeah, you got these houses. It doesn't matter whether the market value of the house goes up or down. The rent is the same. So
Exactly.
hey, when your time is on your side, you can wait it out. Hey, you take Detroit for instance. There were times when in certain neighborhoods the homes were selling $200,000, then boom, it dipped because of the economy. You get homes for $30,000, $40,000. Now it's going back up. All right.
Now,
So now you. Mhm.
speaking of that, Gary, when the value of the house goes up, don't doesn't your rent go up 1% or 2% or 3% or whatever?
No, sir. Not in
Nope.
residential. No. You can't just arbitrarily raise your rent just because the value went up. Only way
Right.
you end up with an empty price. If the average rents are $1,500 a month, you say, "Oh, wait, the economy's up. I'm gonna take mine to 2,000." All right, you just got an empty building.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Okay, so no. But what the wise thing to do? Don't stop there. You get that one. Now your next goal is to find another house. Okay, because going back to my original example, and I always use the worst case scenario. So what if it's only $300 net to you in income? With five houses over time, now you got an extra $1,500 a month. And to your point, PC, as the market increases, just like it is now, rents have risen tremendously now. So now you're able to participate in that because you're keeping up with the market rents, and it's the multiple numbers. Five homes is pretty easy to George's point again. And if you can't manage them for whatever, you can have them five homes in different states, different cities, or you can have them all in one state. And then that five grows into 10 because what you're doing is sending that money back out to make more money. So that $300 is coming in. Don't go spend it. Don't go, okay, now I can go get me some new gym shoes or whatever the heck we buy. Don't do that. You send that money back out and buy me another house. And you get that rent, buy me another house. And then, if however markets are, and it gets to the point where you can refinance those houses using other people's money, now you borrow that. That's a loan. Now you can not only can you keep the upkeep up on them, and you go buy you some more houses. And before long, before you know it, you have 10 or a portfolio of properties, and they're not going to just you're not just going to net 300 anymore. After a while, as they become paid off, you don't have those mortgages anymore. So that $1,500 a month you're charging, that's 1,500 coming into your pocket minus taxes and insurance. That's the way you build wealth.
Definitely. I'll throw this word out there: mutual fund. If you think about when you get multiple homes to rent out, it's equivalent to a mutual fund. And why do I say that? Is because if one is vacant, it's not going to hurt you as bad because you've got four or five others that are still bringing in rent while you're. It's almost like a churn. So it's like a mutual fund. If one stock goes down, the overall balances out, so you're still in the plus. So, even if you're buying duplex, if one upstairs is vacant, one downstairs still pays the rent, still pays the mortgage till you get the other one fulfilled. So, that's the difference between buying multi-unit dwellings as opposed to residential dwellings. So that's another thing you want to think about. I think the overall point is, folks, is the fact that buying property is a safe investment. It may not look like that, and it may look like a stretch, but there's doable ways. There's a thing, and I think we've mentioned before. It's called an adjustable mortgage rate, where you can go in knowing that I just need to get this money. You get an arm. It starts out at a low percentage rate to allow you to get in there, to qualify and get in. Then once you get in, You go ahead and, like I said, do the fix up. Then you go in and you get a mortgage that's at a fixed rate, or you go in and get a mortgage where you're going to take some money out now that it's fixed up, and you're going to pay off all your heavy debts that were associated with them. So there's multiple ways to do it, but the whole point is to start to get that as an idea of how. Get your group together, 3 or 4 of your best friends that you're all thinking have the same synergy. Pool your money, but to sit back on the sideline and look at other folks and say, I wish I had. That's not the answer, because property is always a good investment, whether it's going up or down. It doesn't matter. It's always a good investment. I've had homes, rental property for years, and yeah, I've lost money on them. Yeah, but in the overall scheme of things, it's always come out on the positive side.
All right. Well, fellas, how we looking here?
You're looking great. I think we need to go ahead and firm it up here. You got anything else to add, Smitty?
No, sir. No, sir. I think we've covered most of the topic, and so we'll leave the decision up to our listeners to buy and hold or to flip. And I won't say flop. But I guess I just said flop, didn't I?
Yeah.
But no, we wish you much success in whatever endeavors that you choose to engage yourself in, because at the Crotchety Old Men, we're all about ideas, and ways to make money, but more importantly, other ways to keep the money that you make. So with that, BC,
I'm all in. I'm all in and all out. I think we've summed it up pretty fairly. And Gary, you've added your words of wisdom to the episode. So I second that emotion.
Okay,
All
well, let's
right.
close
Peace,
out with a
guys.
quote. Let's close out
All
with a
right.
quote.
Peace
Oh, you
out.
got a quote. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. We got to always have a quote. Okay. And here it is. The strength of the powerless is in its knowledge of the powerful.
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Hi, this is Paul with the Crotchety Old Man. Hey, if you like what you're hearing from the Crotchety Old Men podcast, hit that subscribe or follow button on Google, Spotify, or iHeartRadio podcasts. You can also send us feedback or topics you would like to hear discussed. Send us your comments to info at thecrotchetyoldmenpodcast.com. Once again, that's info at thecrotchetyoldmenpodcast.com, or visit our website at www.thecrotchetyoldmenpodcast for previous episodes.